All right, welcome inside the Rod Peterson Show studios. I'm Darren DuPont. Thanks for watching. It's episode 2 of the program that still doesn't have a name, although I've been polling people for the last couple of days anyway, and we don't have a name for this show yet, but we're going to do that soon. So welcome. Today on the show is Michael Brennan. He's the CEO and president of Great West. We're going to bring him in a second, Great Western Brewing. If you missed episode 1 with Direct West CEO Keith Janot, you can go back on the YouTube feed or here on the Facebook page, and you can see our conversation with Keith Janot, the president and CEO of Great Western Brewing. We're live on Instagram too, so I don't know if anybody's actually watching there, but we're going to bring in Michael. So let's bring him in now. Michael Brennan. He's the president and CEO of Great Western Brewing. Afternoon, Michael. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks very much. How are you?
Good. We got you loud and clear, so that's great. So you said before we got on here, you're not at the office right now, but how have you been spending your time? You said about 50-50, hey, between the home office and the brewery?
Yeah, it's an evolution, I will tell you. So we have not stopped production since all of this started. Beer's been deemed something that's essential to have in the market, which I wholeheartedly support. So we've been continuing to operate, but we've been operating a lot differently than we're used to. We've had to really change a number of the things we do in the production area. The fortunate part for us is brewing starts as a process that needs absolute cleanliness all the time. So we had some very high sanitation standards that we started with, and we've made them even more frequent in the warehouse. We're sanitizing forklifts, and we're doing all those things on a regular basis that didn't used to be part of the routine, but now certainly are.
Yeah, I believe that for sure. So that was my second question: was how have you been affected, here, by COVID-19? Because we know we can go to the store and pick up a box of Original 16. I think that's what's over this shoulder. There you go. There it is.
Yeah, I love seeing that image.
And then how much of that is, the bars and the restaurants and things like that? So how much have you guys been impacted?
So it certainly, we're bleeding a little bit is the easy way to say it. It depends market by market. So we sell our beer, West, Manitoba West, and each market's just a little bit different. Original 16 is a very, what we call an on-premise brand, heavily skews to bars and restaurants. People love to have a pint in that, fantastic Original 16 glass that's so recognizable. So that's impacted us, and they're good friends of ours, all the owners of bars and restaurants, and they're having a tough time. So it hurts us a bit. That being said, retail and consumers still want to have a beer. They just have to have that beer from their house, and so they're going into stores and buying it more than we've seen in the past. But the two don't offset each other exactly. So we're down a little bit, but we're holding our own.
Okay, check this out. Chuba was by. Did you know that Rod's been calling Chris Hubbard Chuba, the rep here in Regina? But he brought by these, the Original 16 WHL glasses. How did these come about? And are they in production in boxes for giveaways, or what's the deal?
Yeah, so a little bit of unfortunate timing, but it actually happened in November of last year. We started talking about doing something that we could as a beer company. We're not one of the big beer giants, so unfortunately I can't sponsor the NHL or the NFL. But we have a lot of sponsorships with teams here in the province, and so we started talking about it and said, why don't we do something that we can put our glass co-branded with teams that we sponsor in the sports side of our business and put them into market. So we were just putting them in as this all started to develop. So just at the end of the WHL season is what we were trying to target.
Yeah.
And then we have a couple other teams that will be coming on. So the Saskatoon Hilltops is another long-standing partnership that we've had, and so we've got Hilltop glasses ready to go. They were in the market, but we'll refresh that in the fall as well as their kind of August as their season gets going. So
cool.
We'll do that. I'm excited. We've got 10 teams that we've put on glasses from hockey teams, obviously football, and also the U of S Huskies.
Okay, well, we've only seen 3 though. We've only got the Pats, the Warriors, and the Broncos. Is the Blades and the Raiders not on here?
Oh yeah, they are there. So Blades and Raiders are definitely in that mix. Melfort Mustangs, Nipawin Hawks. I tell you what, after we get off the call, I'll see what I can do for you guys so you can see the whole set down there in the studio.
That's cool. I love that stuff. I know Rod loves that stuff too, so that's pretty neat. So I want to talk about that quickly, the Rod Peterson Show, because that's where we're doing this on the set from, and you guys have been wonderful partners. And I remember back last summer when we were sitting in the boardroom there, it was a great day, and then we went across the street and had some dinner, and then went, we did the Rush game, or the basketball game is what it was, and Scott came with us, Henbury. But what was it about, what appeals you guys to what Rod's doing and what we're doing with the Rod Peterson Show?
Well, I think we're talking to the same customer, quite frankly. So I know just from my own personal experience, I don't tend to watch a hockey game or a game like that without a beer in my hand, and obviously I prefer it to be a Great Western beer, original 16, and I think you're talking to that same customer, and so as those partnerships work out, we're excited to be behind them. I think the other element that we both do really, really well is we're a lot more community focused, somewhat focused on Saskatchewan as well, specifically, which is, the heart of our business, the heart of where you guys come from. So it was a natural partnership.
And so that's something else, because you guys are so embedded in Saskatchewan, such a part of the fabric of the province and the communities. And Rod's the same way. I mean, 20 years as voice of the Riders, 30 years in the radio and TV in this province. So it fit really well. But the thing that hit me, and correct me anytime I'm going down the wrong path, but it feels like we're trying to do the same thing as you grow into Alberta and Manitoba, and then maybe grow it into British Columbia, and then maybe into Ontario and across the country. We're trying to do the same thing with the show. And too often, I think, we're just looking for the quick buck, right? Especially from, our perspective. Hey, anybody who wants to give us advertising dollars, you're not going to turn away business, right? But we kind of feel it's important to be aligned with businesses and partners who have the same kind of goals and are on the same path. I think that's a big hit too, right?
Absolutely, it is for us as well. I mean, our focus as we look at it, we make great beer, but why are we here? The purpose that we're here is we're here for communities. We're here to make the places that you and I live just a little bit better. More memories, more fun, and we're part of those occasions. As a beer company, we get to be a part of a lot of those kind of events and activities. And I know we'll talk about this a little more, but supporting local is what we do at the heart of our business. It's the reason our brewery is still here. 16 guys 30 years ago, when faced with being told that the brewery was closing and that they were going to either lose their jobs or have to move to Edmonton or some other factory, made a really big gamble, quite frankly, to try and run a large brewery. And they did a hell of a job, and that's allowed us to be here 30 years later, supporting our community and supporting all the communities we sell our beer in.
How much do you still talk to those guys, or are those guys still involved with the brewery at all? The 16 guys.
Well, we still have 3 that actually work in the factory. One of them, Greg Kitts, is retiring actually in a month from now. We have a couple other retirements coming up, so they are coming to the end of their work life. But that being said, the communication with those guys, we do get to see them several times during the year when we have events with staff and retirees and bringing them back. And they just have a lot of valuable feedback about how our business operates, what the perception is of our brand. So I always enjoy having a conversation with any of the original 16 that are still here today. That's
super cool, because when the brewery is closing down and things are going the wrong way, it's tough to convince people, hey, this is something to invest in. This is going to be hot. But, what was special about those guys? Do you know much about their story? Because, you haven't been around the company as long, obviously, from the beginning as those guys have. But how much of that story, do you know about that? What were they thinking? What was it about those guys? Because, the business is the business, but the business, for me, it's always the people, right? It's always the people that are in it.
Well, and that was at the heart of their decision. I've had the opportunity to actually talk to a lot of them at length. Greg Kitts is one of the individuals that is sometimes credited with really being the impetus for those 16 guys getting together. As the brewery was announced to be closing, Greg actually went on his own and tried to send out letters to a number of potential investors, other breweries that might be looking at buying an additional brewery, and really selling the idea of keeping this brewery alive in Saskatoon. And it fell on deaf ears. Nobody was interested in buying the brewery. And his wife, Brenda, finally said, listen, I'm tired of hearing you talk about this. Why don't you just get some people together and buy it yourself? and that's what started these 16 guys talking about it. It was a huge risk. I mean, these guys put their houses up as collateral to purchase the brewery. It was not easy going. There's all sorts of great stories about kind of getting back into business and starting back up and having to find yeast because as the factory changed hands, the yeast was no longer active. And these guys, they figured it out and they got it going. And we built a really great franchise with the Great Western brand, and since then we've built on that, the Brew House brand, and probably most recognizable these days, the original 16 brand that we sell across Western Canada.
Speaking of the 016, Kirk is watching on the Facebook feed, Brennan, and he says he misses the copper ale. It's been a while. Did the copper go away for a little bit?
So copper hasn't gone away. We actually one of the products that got slightly impacted as we went into the COVID-19, and our distributor had some IT issues. We were a little short of stock, but I tell you, I was walking through the warehouse this morning, and there's pallets and pallets of it heading out to distributors. So you should be able to find it in your retail.
There you go, Kirk, the copper ale. And you guys have been innovating some new stuff too. The Hell's Half Acre, that's one, right? That's been fairly new. How much are you guys innovating and trying to come up with new products?
So we've got a whole innovation process that's actually getting much better established. We did launch Hell's Half Acre last year, so it's a light lager, really tying into a couple elements that we're hearing more and more about in the market, which is lower alcohol. People looking for lower alcohol alternatives. There's all sorts of 0% alcohol. We're right in the middle. We're 2.6% alcohol with Helles and 90 calories. So that's just one of the innovations. A couple of years before that, we did a Prairie White, so a Belgian style wheat beer. And we're also looking at some innovation that hopefully will be coming out later this year, not even necessarily in the beer space, but other hot beverage space that's currently, you may be able to guess.
You got the thumbs up from Kirk in the comments, so that's good. We've settled that on the copper and the lighter one, so that's good. But so on that, as you're running this business, I mean, your bread and butter's the 016 or some of the traditional products that you guys sell a lot of. How much time do you spend thinking about innovating down new routes or looking at what other beer companies are doing with apple or lime beers or flavors or radlers or all these other things? How much do you take risk into something that maybe isn't quite on what your customers are used to take a chance to go into a new market, or how much are you guys just pounding tried and true? How do you balance that?
It's definitely a balance. We have a very active process of looking at our competitors. I spend a significant amount, probably not time in the office, but time during the evenings and waking up in the middle of the night, thinking about competitors and doing research. And I'm not the only person. We've got an executive team that we're all always looking at what others are doing. I think that's important to see where people are getting success and where they're not. At the same time, you don't necessarily always have to go down a path that is working out for someone else. You can try something different. So, I am a strong advocate that it doesn't hurt to try different things and see what you learn. This partly comes from spending a few years with the technology company Vendasta. A/B testing, try two things and see which one's better than the other, and then move and then figure out do it again, and which is better. So you will continually see innovation from us. We do have a core, so we'll keep those core products always kind of going for us and take in and out products that are no longer are selling. So it's always going to be a balance. I know every time we take a product out, I'll get a number of emails that say, like, how come I can't get that product anymore? And unfortunately, there is a consumer demand element to it.
So Neil is watching too, and he says, is there any trouble getting the product into Alberta? Is that a trouble spot for you guys? Do you have any problems there?
No. So Alberta is our second biggest market. So the difference between an Alberta market and a Saskatchewan market actually has to do with taxes. So many people will ask me why they can buy brew house much cheaper in Alberta than they can in Saskatchewan. And unfortunately, that's just a result of the different tax system. What it's done in Alberta is Alberta really has two primary markets. One is value beer and the other one is premium beer. So we play in both of those segments. Original 16 in the premium side, mostly again on premise. So bars and restaurants being closed has not helped my business for the last 45 days in that province. But at the same time, value beer and brew house is doing really, really well in the province. It's the number 4 beer in the province in value.
We're talking beer and business with the CEO and president of Great Western Brewing, Michael Brennan. So Tyler asked, and you kind of touched on this too already, but he said with the current trend of non and de-alcoholized, beers on the market, is there any talk of stepping into that area? You talked about the Helles Half Acre as you're kind of in between. How much are you guys trying to push into that area?
Yeah, so we have looked at it. It's I think it's a growing segment. I think it will continue to build, but it is a fairly small segment at this point. That's actually one of the reasons we went down the 2.6% route with Helles. Some very interesting work done out of New Zealand, actually, in that what's called mid-strength beers have become incredibly popular. One of their most popular categories is that 2 to 3% alcohol by volume beer. It gives someone the opportunity. The complication you have with a no alc or a very low alcohol beer is it's much more difficult to get the complexity of the beer flavors, the malts in there. And that's one of the things that we were able to maintain with our 2.6 Helles.
Okay, really cool. I want to get into the business side and the personal side of it. I noticed the open flag behind you from the British Open. Did you go? Did you collect that yourself? Or was that one in an auction? Or
no, I've had the opportunity to be at a few British Opens. That one actually is 2011 at Royal St. George's, where Darren Clark won that year, and I had the opportunity to golf with him about 6 months after his win in Bermuda, which is where I was living. And he signed. That's a signed flag. I had Darren sign it before we had it framed. So
wow. So how did you get to golf with him? Is this something that came up through work, or how did you make that connection with Darren Clark?
Well, I through Bacardi. So I worked for Bacardi Limited, largest family-owned spirits company in the world. So worked with them. Their headquarters is Bermuda, and I spent 10 years in Bermuda with Bacardi, 3 overseas in Europe. And as part of the time in Bermuda, Bacardi was one of the sponsors when they did the Grand Slam championship on the island. So I think 5 or 6 years I got the opportunity to golf with a pro each year. So pretty interesting, a lot of fun.
Okay, that's really cool. So Brady's watching, and he watches the Rod Peterson show. He's one of our P1s, but he's watching now. He's a young kid who's just going to finish up high school and graduate and looking at his next chapter of his life. So, and I've had this question asked to me too, Michael. It's like now with Rod and different things, you get invited to different dinners and you get invited to golf tournaments and to do all these things. And I've had young people who I'm, close with. How come I don't get invited? How come you don't bring me along? I'm like, well, go back, do 10 years of work, and then you'll start getting invited to stuff. I mean, I've been in this business since like 2006, and I'm only just starting to get that stuff now, right? I mean, you got to put in the time. So when you were in high school, what did you do where did your career go from high school to, I guess Bacardi would be the first big stop and starting to get those opportunities? Because I can't imagine you just went from high school to becoming a rep for Bacardi, and all of a sudden you're on the 18th green with Darren Clark. I'm sure that didn't happen overnight.
It did not, and in fact, I took I took a circuitous route to my career. I went to high school here in Saskatoon and ended up going to McGill University, and I was training to become a civil engineer. I come from a long-standing family of accountants, so chartered accountants. Both my parents, my grandfather, my sisters, my uncles, there's lots of accountants. So I was trying to buck the trend and do something completely different. Your career was mapped out
for you, wasn't it? At a young age, they knew exactly what you were going to do.
Well, what I quickly learned was that engineering is not for me. So it was a miraculous or a really good failure at engineering is what I'll tell you. So I actually, after about a year and a half at McGill, with my tail between my legs, came back home to Saskatoon. and tried again. And I ended up going to the University of Saskatchewan. I enrolled in intersession and summer session to do some courses so I could get grades back to get into the business school here at the university. Was able to do that. And during that, I never thought I would become an accountant. And as the decision came in your third year, what was your major going to be? I ended up choosing accounting because it just made the most sense to me. So I started my career with Deloitte here in Saskatoon again, and it was being a chartered accountant. So getting the designation gave me the opportunity to be invited to move to Bermuda to work for Ernst & Young, in fact, over there. And that those two kind of finance, audit and accounting firms gave me the experience that Bacardi ended up looking for somebody on the investment side of their business. They needed to hire somebody to join their team, and I got the call and joined that team in 2000. So, it was
cool.
Certainly lucky in many ways. I will tell you, I didn't get invited to many golf tournaments or to meet any celebrities for a long time, even with Bacardi. I had a great opportunity. So I spent 3 years in Bermuda with Bacardi, and my wife and I had planned we're going to move back to Saskatoon.
Yeah,
it was our thought process. I'd lined up a job in the city and went to quit at Bacardi, and they wouldn't take my resignation letter. And by the end of that day, I actually was asked to move to Geneva to relocate the treasury team. So I ended up moving over to Europe for 3 years. And while there, was part of the deal team that bought Grey Goose vodka for Bacardi.
Very cool. Good for you. And that's cool too, because just because you go into get an accounting degree or you get a finance doesn't mean you're going to be sitting in an accounting firm all day, every day for the next 40 years. I mean, you can go and apply those skills to just about any industry. And I mean, you took it into Bacardi and now with Great Western, right?
Yeah, a bit of a joke in my career is I seem to keep coming back to alcohol. I don't know if that's a sign or what, but I spent some great time with Bacardi. Before that, at the audit firms, I got to spend a lot of time on the investment side. So I got to spend some really interesting years actually working with large investment hedge funds and big funds around the world. So I learned a lot there and got to apply that for a private company in Bacardi. And the opportunities there, I was very fortunate to get a number of opportunities over my 13 years with them, and more senior experiences, and traveled the world. It comes at a cost because I spent my last year at the company at Bacardi. I spent a little over 250 days on the road, so away from family, and that was one of the reasons. As our kids got a little older, we wanted to come back to Saskatoon and make sure they had the same kind of Saskatchewan values both my wife and I have from both being raised here in the province.
Was Vendasta your first job when you got back to Saskatchewan?
It was. So as I moved back to Saskatchewan, I actually hadn't planned on working. I was retiring. Okay. That was my goal. Got home, I'd retired. My wife and I started to build the house that we're in now. And I thought I would take it easy, spend a bunch of time with my kids and reconnect with the family and enjoy life, and quickly realized that there wasn't enough in the day to keep me occupied, and I was going a little bit crazy. So ended up having a couple lunches with Brendan King over at Vendasta through a mutual friend actually from Deloitte. And what Brendan was building in Vendasta just sounded so interesting, and I thought that some of the skill set that I developed over the years I could use to help him build the company that he was trying to build. So
yep. So you'd have been right in on the ground floor then, right?
Yeah. So I joined in 2014. Yep. So they'd been around for a few years by then, but they were about 55, 60 people when I joined.
That was like just before they were taking off like a rocket.
Yeah, and it is a rocket ship. Continues to be a rocket ship to this day. It's just such a dynamic and vibrant place to work. It's a lot of fun. Brendan knows how to kind of build a great team and get people energized and keep them energized. It's certainly, you don't go to work any day without being energized about going into that building.
No kidding. So when you're on that rocket ship and it's going great places and one of the leading tech companies, I mean, it's a leader in North America, not just in Saskatoon and Saskatchewan. How do you get off that ship and come back. I mean, you said alcohol calls your name, so all of a sudden you get off that ship, but you're into a pretty nice role with Great Western.
Yeah, so I actually, as I was the CFO for Vendasta. As I was in that role, I actually was asked to join the board of directors for Great Western Brewery after being back a year or 2 years. I can't quite remember when I joined the board, but so I had been in that advisory level with Great Western for a few years, and there was a decision made to change some of the management team, and it was at that point that I was asked if I was interested in stepping in to take over running that company. And I think certainly Brendan and I had long conversations about it. He understood that beer is a passion of mine. Technology is not necessarily my strongest wheelhouse. I think I did a pretty good job when I was there. I hope for them. But they also, in some of the aspirations that they're looking to accomplish, it was just the right time for me to step aside and have someone else come in and take over on that finance side. So it actually worked really, really well. Brendan and I continue to have a very close friendship. We love to get together once physical distancing is relaxed a little bit for dinners and chat about old times and new times. It's nice to have other CEOs you can chat with and learn from their experiences, and hopefully they can learn from yours.
Exactly. So how do you keep allow yourself or to be able to stay in a position where you can continue to do what you want to do and on your terms, when you can decide to come back home and retire and the day's not quite, full enough. So let's go and join this real great startup. And it's not exactly what I want, but, with the tech side and this great opportunity with Great Westerns there, how do you, stay in that mindset that you allow yourself to do that? And it's not just always about the paycheck and making sure that you're taking care of your family, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it certainly does. I've been put in a pretty fortunate spot with the time I spent overseas that economics isn't the key driver for me in working anymore. And so what it's allowed me to do, and I said it when Brendan and I kind of teamed up, I teamed up with him and his company, was listen, I'm going to do this as long as I'm having a whole lot of fun. And if I stop having fun, I'm going to tell you, and then we should plan for me to exit. And I've had that exact same conversation with the board at Great Western, which is I'll continue to do this as long as I'm having a good time and I'm adding value for the company. That could be a decision I make. It could be a decision that the board makes as to whether I'm adding value or not. So and we have that great dialogue quite often just to make sure. And from my side, I can tell you I'm having a great amount of fun. I am really excited every day to go to work. We've got challenges. We've got things like COVID-19 that causes some pain and some angst at times, but at the same time, it doesn't deter me from wanting to get in there and kind of talk with people. It's a fantastic team in the brewery and the whole sales team across Western Canada. So I love going to work.
That's cool. Really great. So one thing that, we're kind of doing right now, we've got Jordan in the back and Clark and Rod and me and Ryan's, here with IKS and Paul and everything. We're a pretty small team. It's not very big. But how many employees at Great Western? How many people are part of that organization?
We have 87 employees across Western Canada.
Yeah, so that's a little bit bigger. How do you handle and build and create and enforce, corporate culture and things like that? How do you do that? Because one guy, 87, you can probably communicate with most of them on a somewhat regular basis, but that would be pretty tough still with 87. And the more you grow and you get over 100 and you get, more employees, it's tough, right? So how do you take, your mindset, and clearly it's positivity and the way you've been able to navigate your career, how do you kind of filter that down to all 87 employees?
Yeah, I would tell you the core is open communication. So I'm a big believer in transparency and making sure that we're talking to everybody as frequently as we can, so they understand where we're coming from as a management team. And involvement. So walking around, I love walking around our factory and talking to the people that are operating all the equipment, making that beer flow through that building. I also love being out in the field with our commercial organization, understanding what their struggles and challenges are. And part of my role is to try and alleviate the struggles that they have, put the right things in place so that they can be successful. So it's just openly communicating that, and as frequently and as much as possible. It's certainly more of a challenge in this current environment. So we've actually right now we do regular WebExes. So our commercial team is doing WebEx and using Zoom meetings and GoToMeetings to meet on a regular basis and train and learn more internally while they're unfortunately having to sit in their houses. We're getting close to being able to go back into the field, but for now we're still at home. So keeping them active and involved, and we'll do Friday afternoon happy hours where we'll all get on a call and perhaps have a couple beverages from a great brewery here in the city, and just chat with each other and kind of stay close in that way, so that everybody knows that they've got someone they can talk to, and we will get back to normal at some point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as we do that, one thing I wanted to touch on too was, you guys are so great in the local community, and Rod's been really good at this too, especially with our partners. Supporting all of those local businesses. How much are you seeing that as being something that's more important now than ever, supporting the local businesses?
It's absolutely critical. So it's at the heart of our business, but we know that as this kind of unfolds over the next several months, there are going to be too many businesses that are going to have a very difficult time, both in opening or staying open, or just staying within the community. So we have to do everything we can to help those businesses. We certainly are doing it as much as we can. We're also preparing a plan that will hopefully help our customers come back into market when they have the opportunity to do so. But shopping local, I can't stress it enough. My wife and I love to have takeout with the kids, and so we're doing that a couple times a week just to make sure that we're supporting local businesses and spreading that love around in a little way like that. And everybody has to keep doing that. We don't want to lose those local businesses. It's what adds the vibrancy to any city or community.
No kidding. Can you tell me when we can expect to be, in an arena in the Western Hockey League or at a football field enjoying a Great Western? Do you have any insight that maybe we don't?
I unfortunately have heard all the same news that you have. I'd love to be able to tell you I have different news. I'm not optimistic for this year, quite frankly, just looking at how things are rolling out. I see today at lunch watching the news, the Grey Cup, they're talking lots about the Grey Cup. I think it would be a real challenge to host an event like that, even in November. I would love it to happen in some way. I think we're going to see a transition. My guess is initially there's such a hunger for live sports that I can see the leagues trying to come up with some sort of structure that at least allows them to put games on television for people to view without being there. It'll be a much different experience, but as you look at kind of TV and networks, they're starting to do game shows and other shows in a format that is without audiences. So I can foresee that being an intermediary step. That means I need to rely on people to drink 016 sitting on their couch, but I'm sure people are willing to do that.
They're okay with that. We were talking about it today, the Korean Baseball League. Are you watching that? Are you going to buy into the Korean League on ESPN and maybe TSN?
I haven't got in. I haven't watched any live sports because I haven't found one that I really want to.
Good.
I struggle watching. I struggle watching recorded events. You see the curling from 2016. I know the end of the movie, so it's tough for me to sit there and watch it. So hopefully we come up with something.
Yeah,
else to watch.
I hope so too. We'll leave you there with that. This has been really great, Michael. I appreciate it. And we love your support of the show. So thanks for that.
You're very welcome. Just make sure everyone keeps drinking 016. No better way to cap off a day working from home.
There you go. They're on the shelf behind us, and they're going to be there to stay. And appreciate this again. Stay safe, Michael.
You too. Cheers.
All right. Michael Brennan is the CEO and president of Great Western Brewing. I think that's it. Drop your comments in now. It'll be posted on YouTube. It'll be posted at the podcast as well. And if you missed, again, the first episode with Keith Gino at Direct West, you can go back on the Facebook page or on the YouTube channel and check that out. But again, big thanks to Michael Brennan joining us as we continue to navigate through some business leaders. There'll be other leaders in sport, culture. Rod Peterson's going to be a guest on this. He doesn't know that yet, but he will be. So he's going to be on one of the next episodes too. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you like and and subscribe on the YouTube page and here on Facebook for the notifications. And thanks for watching. I still haven't figured out how to end this. Neil, thanks for watching. I appreciate that too. And I hope it answered your questions about getting some Great Western into Alberta. So until then, again, see you. Bye.